everyone, and welcome to the All Elite Zone podcast on YouTube and Twitch. We are here for our interview with former WWE star Eugene, also WCW star Nick Dinsmore. I don't feel like he gets enough recognition for that, but I want to thank you for being on. I've been looking for this for. I don't feel like he gets enough recognition for that, but I want to thank you for being on. I've been looking for this playback there. Anyways. I've been looking forward for this interview for a few years now. As I told you a story before we started, I met you at Jerry Law's Bar and Grill a few years ago, and we took a picture on the throne. I still got that picture. But yeah, it's really great to have you on. I appreciate you taking time for your busy schedule. Yeah, I guess I'll go first, and Adam, and then Siren, and then. But yeah, my question is pretty simple. I always ask this question to anyone we have on. And a lot of these questions, I ever went on other podcasts to see what your answer was because I wanted to be the one to ask you. Then me find out myself. But my question is, how did you get into wrestling?
So I wanted to be a wrestler since I was about 8 years old. I saw WWF Saturday Night's Main Event when Hulkster wrestled Nikolai Volkov, and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff beat the bejesus out of Roddy Piper, and then Uncle Elmer got married. And that was the first time I saw wrestling, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. As I grew up in the Louisville, Kentucky area, so I got to see USWA Memphis-based wrestling. I used to go to the Louisville Gardens on Tuesday nights, and eventually got trained by Nightmare Danny Davis in the Louisville, Kentucky area.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask that too. Yeah, about your training with, Nightmare Danny Davis, obviously one of the founders of OVW, and what that experience was like.
So I started training in 1996, and I think in late 98 or early 99 sometime is when the WWE partnered with OVW. So for the first couple of years, it was a small independent wrestling school, basically, that had live events once a week in the building. But then as WWE came, there got to be a lot more athletes there, guys like John Cena and Batista and Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, Victoria, Shelton Benjamin. So I got to help wrestle with and help train that group of talent that made it onto WWE.
Very cool.
So I went through a lot of the whole Eugene kind of story because I stopped watching WWE in like 2007, 2008, and just recently rekindled my love of wrestling. Probably like 3 years ago. So going through it though, you wrestled a lot of really awesome people and did a lot of really cool spots with some like really cool people like Kurt Angle and The Rock and stuff. Who was your favorite person to wrestle, like chemistry wise? Like who did you find it easiest to wrestle?
Like guys that I grew up with in OVW, guys like Doug Basham and Rob Conway. I've wrestled them so many times that the chemistry was good, but when I was first starting wrestling, I used to get to wrestle the Hustler Rip Rogers at least once a week, and wrestling with him I was like a kid in training, and he was like a seasoned pro. So wrestling with him was very easy. And then when I went on to wrestle Hunter, Triple H, it was very similar to wrestling Rip. I mean, Hunter had that much experience and called the match kind of the same way in the same flow. So but I've been in the ring with The Rock. I've been in the ring with Hulk Hogan. I even pinned Vince McMahon, so I can't necessarily say who I've got the best chemistry with.
Wow. Okay. Siren kind of set me up for that. I was going to ask this later because I thought we would kind of build it to some of the stuff, but I'll ask it now. A person that you spent a lot of time with, at least on screen, who I would really love to hear more about, but it's hard to do because he seems like he's kind of detached himself from kind of the public persona a little bit, is William Regal. Tell me about your time with William Regal and like some of the stuff that you learned from him, which I'm sure would probably take days, but maybe you can summarize it a bit. I'd love to hear more. I loved it when he had his podcast. I learned so much from it, and just listening to him, I could listen to it for hours. Please go ahead.
So before I made it to the main roster, I told you I was wrestling Rip Rogers, and Rip and Regal were partners in Germany, or roommates. They're roommates in Germany. And then it was actually Rip that dictated to Regal what to say to tell Cowboy Bill Watts to get to WCW when Regal came over to the States in the 90s. So I knew who he was, and I'd met him before, and he was very nice. And of course, I looked up to him because he was a wrestler's wrestler, or a man's man, as some might say.
A lot of people, a real man's man.
But then I got to ride with him, and I got to know him. I got to meet his family, so it was really cool to be able to see him on, cooking breakfast for his kids when I stayed one night. But then to be in the car with him and just be able to ask him any question, from the match we just had to a match we've got coming to I saw this one time, or why is it this way? I mean, really, he was a mentor and a friend. I mean, like you said, the stuff he taught me in the short time we were together was a lot, so it's hard to fit into just a couple minutes. But I would always try to make him laugh. So if Eugene and Regal are out in the public, and I notice somebody that notices us, then I'm going to try to make him laugh. So one time we were with a WWE representative doing some media day, and we're walking up to a building, and Regal goes, Eugene, what have I told you about coming up to a door with a lady? Because the representative was a woman. So I uprooted a plant that was next to the door as I opened the door, and I handed her the plant. And Regal just started fucking losing it. Sorry. I'm just laughing behind him. And that's what I would try to do most of the time, is see if I could make him laugh. Because he was always so straight. And I knew if I could crack him. And then I don't know if it's the same one or if it's a different one, but we were in Milwaukee, and we were on some morning show. We were talking about a pay-per-view that's coming up later in the month. And Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, came in. And I've never seen Regal geek out over anybody, but all of a sudden he starts geeking out because she's British royalty, or I guess used to be. I'm not sure if she's out or in or what the status is. But he's telling me that the working class is not proper for them to approach the royalty. So, of course, Fergie comes up to me, because that's when Triple H had broken my arm, so I got an arm sling. She said, "What's happened to you?" I'm like, I got hurt wrestling, but my friend is from England, so we got the picture. He put the picture in his book, so I always thought that was pretty cool that, he geeked out over Sarah Ferguson, and then I got to get the picture.
Wow.
So this kind of goes on with what I'm going to do now. We have a member that couldn't make it on today, but he made a video to send in, and it's kind of onto this. It gets asked all the time, but here's Mr. Jacobs.
Well, first of all, Eugene, I would like to welcome you to the All Elite Zone. I am Mr. Jacobs, and I actually have a two-part question for you. My first part is, number one, can you tell us who was your favorite person to travel the road with? Someone that there was never a dull moment with. Also, number two, do you have any funny stories from the road on your travels over the years that you can share or that you're allowed to share? But yes, those are my questions for you. And once again, thank you so much for joining us here in the All Elite Zone. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
For Jacob couldn't make it. Why the heck couldn't Jacob make it? I'm hot about it. Well, I got an answer and a question for Jacob. First, the question: who the heck likes the Green Bay Packers? And secondly, like I said, I traveled with Regal, so it was always cool to travel with Regal. And at the time, Tajiri jumped in with us, so it's Regal and Tajiri and myself until Regal went to SmackDown, Cena came to Raw, and then it was Cena and Tajiri and myself. So when Tajiri and I would ride with Regal, generally he would sleep in the morning because he's notoriously got sleeping problems. So he would always kind of sleep in. And Tajiri and I would get up, we'd go to the gym, maybe go get something to eat. So one day we go get something to eat, and he goes, "Let's go McDonald's." Now, I can't speak for the entire Japanese culture, but for the most of the Japanese wrestlers that I've met, they can speak some English. I believe that most, at least Japan and most other countries, are taught English in school. Not that they taught it the entire time, but they learn a little bit. So I knew Tajiri could speak English because the first time I ever met him, he was talking on a cell phone like this. And I feel like some of maybe the Japanese wrestlers downplay their ability to speak English to then be able to favor themselves in either a wrestling, if they don't want to take some big move, all of a sudden they can't speak English, or if the bill comes at a restaurant, all of a sudden they can't speak English, but in a good way, right? So I see Tajiri on the phone talking like this, so I assume he's talking to like American Car Insurance or somebody where he had to speak English, but he didn't want the boys to know. So as I got to know Tajiri, he could speak English, but he couldn't enunciate very well. His enunciation, like Funaki had great enunciation for English, but Tajiri didn't have the best. So Tajiri and I go out to go to the gym, go eat McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. Next day, go to the gym. He goes, let's go McDonald's. I said, man, I can't go to McDonald's twice. Can we at least go to Burger King? He goes, I can't say Uber. I said Big Mac. I can't say Uber. So some time goes by. Regal goes to SmackDown. Cena comes to Raw. We're out after a show, and we're at like an Applebee's, and electricity goes out. So they can't microwave us any food, but they can make us drink. So we sit there and drink for like 2 hours. And finally, Tajiri goes, man, I'm so hungry I could eat a Whopper. Sorry, Uber, sorry,
Oh, yeah, we've always asked that. We've gotten a lot of funny responses from that, asking wrestlers that, but that's got to be one of the top ones on here now.
That's hilarious.
I always have a problem with stop laughing. So you were in WCW as Nick Dinsmore. I haven't, at least for me, I don't like to listen to interviews and stuff because I want to ask them myself. So how was your run in WCW as Nick Dinsmore?
I wouldn't really say it was a run. I would just say I did some appearances, but I wrestled in the very first Brian Pillman Memorial show, which I believe was in '98. And then Terry Taylor was working for WCW at the time, and I met him at the Brian Pillman Memorial show. So he started calling me in. I did, I think, 2 Nitros and 3 Thunders and a handful of Saturday nights. And then Terry Taylor was released, I think, in 1999 from WCW, and he got hired by WWE. And then I eventually got a developmental contract with WWE in '99. So I mean, it was fun. It was a great experience. I mean, that's back when the Monday Night Wars were still tight, and WCW was still kind of on the edge when I did my first couple. You know, I wrestled a handicap match with Scott Steiner. We were one difference between that I saw between like WWE and WCW. WWE would have the board of everybody's wrestling out by no later than 2 o'clock generally. Most time 1 or noon. WCW on this particular day when we were in, I can't remember if we were in Boston or New York, but Nassau, I can't remember where we were. But it was like 8 o'clock, and they were going live, and they still didn't have the board out who was wrestling who. You know, because everybody with their particular contract would show up late, and then they had to rebook the whole night, I guess. I wasn't in the production meeting, but I think they threw like 6 luchadors out there just to do stuff in the first 10 minutes. And then Lenny Lane comes up to me and goes, oh, it's me and you tonight. I was like, all right, that's cool. He goes, no, not me against you. It's me and you against Scott Steiner. So we got a handicap match where we got beat up by Scott Steiner in a working way. It was a good match. But at the end of it, if you ever see it, Steiner puts us in the double Steiner recliner. So I get powerbombed on top of Lenny and then put on top of Lenny, and then he hooks Lenny around the throat. And Lenny's selling. You can see his face, and then he chokes him out. And all of a sudden his face goes blank. And I don't think he meant to do that. And Lenny came right back up whenever he let go. But live on TV, you see Lenny Lane just blank out.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, speaking of which, I mean, you have wrestled with many promotions from WWE, WCW, Juggalo Wrestling, OVW. I just want to get your feel from the locker rooms and your experience throughout your time going to all these promotions and what it was like being in the back with, you know, the boys and kind of the feel of that.
Like WCW, I didn't know a whole lot of people. Not that it was a bad experience, but I remember it was distinctly the top guy locker room and the undercard locker room. Again, not that it wasn't like angry or it wasn't like anything bad. That's just the way it was, I guess. But I didn't get necessarily in tight enough with that locker room to maybe make an assessment. But any other time, like OVW was always great because I knew everybody. And then by the time I made it to the WWE locker room, I had trained half the guys that were there, so I knew all of them. So I never really had a problem. I always enjoyed the locker rooms. There was one time at a Juggalo locker room, right? So all these guys were in a lumberjack match, and all the lumberjacks end up bleeding. So they all come running into the locker room, and of course the Juggalo show was at midnight or 4 a.m., so there was no electricity. So we had to pump the electricity into the tent. And I had all my stuff plugged into this one outlet, and all these dudes ran in to take a picture under the light and just bled all over my stuff. And I've never gotten so irate. I had a cold cup of coffee, so I threw it at him. I screamed at him to get out of the locker room. And I don't necessarily feel bad about that now. I could have taken a kinder tone, but these guys literally just bled all over my phone, all my. I was so hard about it.
Yeah, the Juggalo wrestling is a different breed of kind of wrestling promotion. So
absolutely.
So we talked about how like your on the road experiences and stuff like that. For like your personal life, how did that character of Eugene translate when you were like trying to be social or meet people? Like when you met people for the first time who maybe, you know, thought like it wasn't necessarily a character. Did that kind of stuff ever happen? Like, did it ever affect you outside of wrestling? Socially.
Like if I was meeting somebody that was wanting to meet Eugene, then they would meet Eugene. But if like I was meeting somebody else, you know, that didn't necessarily know who I was, then no, I wouldn't do anything like that. But I think a lot of people think that because the climate of maybe the world or America now, that the Eugene character wouldn't work or was a bad thing. But when Eugene character first started, there were a couple media outlets that were like, you know, what's WWE doing now? What's this character that they're doing now? But then once Eugene started to win and they realized it was an underdog story, nobody ever said anything to me. And I've gotten way much more positive affirmation for doing the character than I ever have like somebody saying to me I'm doing something wrong. It's always like, you know, my son or my brother or my sister had, you know, special abilities and they saw Eugene and they said they could do anything because they saw Eugene do it. So I think it's been much more of an inspirational story than anything of a joke or making fun of anyone. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's where I went.
Well, yeah, no, I like that. I just wanted to know, like, if it ever affected you outside. And I mean, if it's the answer is that people found you very inspirational, and that's what I heard going through a lot of your content.
Yeah. You actually answered my question before I asked it. I was going to ask if you could tell us a story about how your character affected someone with special needs. I don't know if any such person came up to you directly, but I'm sure you heard from a lot of people about, you know, people in their family or whatever. And if you have that story, I'd love to hear it. But another one that I had was, did you ever feel like the fact that you were such a character, so to speak, you know, limited your ability to display your in-ring skills and your in-ring ability?
So there was one kid, it might have been 3 years ago now. I was doing a convention in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I call him a kid. He's in his early 20s. Came up to me, got a picture with Eugene, got the autograph 8x10. Then he handed me his phone, and his phone was a text from his mother to me. And his name was Rich, and Rich was always the weird kid growing up, and he didn't have a father, and he was the oldest brother of, I think, 3 kids. A mom was going to work and trying to go to school, and he didn't have a father figure or a male role model. And that was in a time when Eugene came on TV, and he realized that, you know, he might not be he might be different than everybody else in the room, but that doesn't mean he can't achieve and whatever. And now Rich has got he's got a good job. He's got a wife. I mean, he's doing great. But he handed me his phone, and I couldn't finish reading it at the autograph signing without crying. So I asked him to send it to me. So he messaged it to me. So we became friends on Facebook. And every now and then I try to read this text, and I would start crying, right? So after that, Bischoff, I think on his 83 Weeks podcast, said he was ashamed that he was a part of the Eugene angle. But he called me right after and said, hey, will you come on? I think it was his Patreon podcast. Will you come on and talk about it? So I went on there. And I sent him that text from Rich's mom. And I said, you're going to have to read it. And he started to read it, and he started crying. And I think he realized, just like I said, you know, Eugene was an inspirational story. And, you know, it definitely affected people. And I'm seeing that more and more now. People tell me that, even if it's just like on a YouTube message or something. What was your second question?
Yeah, I remember that Bischoff podcast, actually, when talking about that. The second question was, did you ever feel like the fact that basically you were a character and that was really the most important part of your persona on screen? Did it limit ever feel it limited your ability to display your in-ring skills?
No, not really, because I've been wrestling for 8 years. I've done, you know, an hour time limit draw and not use the same move twice, so I was confident in my skills. WWE was merchandising and presenting a character. So like WWE is sports entertainment because it's not necessarily professional. It's not solely professional wrestling. So the in-ring moves matter, but you don't have to know everything to be successful. You know what I mean? So it never bothered me because it was like the next step in the creation of a character. Because I wanted to be successful selling merchandise and being on TV and being in main events and being on pay-per-views, as opposed to everybody going, "Well, this guy's good in the ring," and then it stops there. You know,
I think that's an important message. I wish more, on-screen talent, internalize that. I really do.
The match isn't for me. The match is for the fans. I got to have the match the fans want to see. I can't have the match that I like.
Thank you. Yep, I agree.
So my next question is, we've talked about WCW, we've talked about OVW. WCW closes in 2001. You debut in WWE in 2003, 4 maybe?
2004. April.
So how did that transition go? I've been watching all the watch everything in order, so I've basically seen all your WWE when I think. But what was the transition like? Like WWE closes, how did you get into WWE in 2004?
So I wrestled in WCW in 1998, and then my last appearance was a Saturday night taping in January of '99. I was then hired by WWE in December of '99, and in between there, I did at least 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 shots as an extra. I was what was it? I can't remember. When Vince had his group and he was kicking out China and Kane, and we were the white coats from the insane asylum coming to take Kane away, and then Kane and China beat us up and left us laying in the aisle for like 10 minutes, and then I think I was also I don't remember if I was under contract yet or not, but I was a Druid one time when Austin and Undertaker had the angle and they had the big metal cross that they put Austin on. We carried it out one time, but I was hired by WWE Developmental in 1999, and I thought I was basically just going to be like a tackling dummy or an assistant coach for all the WWE talent, but I just kept on. So from 99 until 2004, I was at OVW wrestling, training, coaching, and then I got called up in 2004. So at that point, WCW really wasn't on my radar as I was under contract by WWE, but it was like everybody kept moving up in OVW towards the main roster. And then when WCW got hired, it's like all these guys kind of pushed us back down. So all of a sudden there's like a whole other group of guys ahead of us. But it was what it was and it ended up the way it ended up. So
yeah, real quick, I got a 2-parter, just a really fun one. You were a 10-time OVW heavyweight champion. Are you
counting?
The most? What's up?
I said, but who's counting?
That's true. Does that make you the most decorated OVW World Heavyweight Champion then for the company?
I believe so. I'm not really sure. I don't really know how many people won it since then, but I mean, I was there for a long time. I was there for 8 years. Most of the guys, I don't know if they're there for that amount of time.
Right, and then get into wrestling. Growing up, which, by the way, you didn't grow up far from me. I'm from the suburb of Chicago, and you're from, Indiana, so you're not far from me at all. But growing up, did you do any other sports growing up or any fun activities, outside of school?
Yeah, I went to a private Catholic high school where I played football. We made it to the state finals in Indiana in 1994, 1993 season. And then I also amateur wrestled. I started amateur wrestling when I was in the 6th grade because I wanted to be a pro wrestler. So I amateur wrestled, and then when I turned 19, I probably could have went to a smaller college and played a sport, but I wanted to start wrestling. So that's when I signed up at OVW. So I pretty much just transitioned to pro wrestling right after that. I graduated high school in 94 in Southern Indiana.
So what is your all-time, like you've kind of Eugene's thing was he's a savant, so he did so many different finishers and stuff, which is so awesome. What was your all-time favorite move to perform? Like, what did you find the most fun?
Like in WWE, it didn't necessarily start out that I was going to start doing like the rock bottom and everybody else's finishers, but it just kind of, I did one and it got a good reaction, so then we just kept doing it. So, I mean, of course, doing a stunner and doing the rock bottom, Hogan's leg drop were the biggest reactions in WWE. But then I realized, like, as I continued and went up to the independents, like the most recent, maybe 3 or 4 years, if I do a stunner, bless you.
Thank you.
If I do a stunner, half the kids don't react because they haven't seen Stone Cold Steve Austin on TV. So it's like now I might do an RKO because it's more over than the stunner is.
That makes sense.
But I'll always joke that if I want to win with it, I'll do a diamond cutter. If I just want to get a good pop, I'll do an RKO.
There you go. Yeah. You actually ran your own promotion for a little while. Tell us about that. Love to hear your stories about that. Yeah.
I was a coach in Orlando with the Performance Center from 2013 to 2015. When I left there, my wife's from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so we moved back there, and she kept telling me there's no independent wrestling in Sioux Falls. I'm like, oh, there's got to be. There's some independent wrestling there, but there wasn't. There was nothing there. The closest wrestling was like 3 hours south in Omaha. So I knew I wanted to start a pro wrestling company, and we started it there. It did well for 7 years. The COVID pandemic really took a toll on all live events, especially live events in places that don't have a large population. So it kind of hindered us. But now I'm in Florida, and we'll see what happens down here.
Excellent.
So my next question, this is one of my main questions I've always wanted to ask. You debuted WWE 2004-ish. How did the Eugene character become a thing? I know I've heard you talk about, as I said, I've tried to avoid listening to that because I want to hear your response to this. This is the question I've always wanted to ask. But how did the Eugene character become a creation? How did that planning period go?
So as I was about 2003, as I was training at OVW, assistant coaching some of the talent there, Rip Rogers was the head coach at OVW at the time. So Rip would always try to give everybody maybe some little insight on maybe you do a character like this or something. Pardon me. Rip's son is like, I don't know if he's valedictorian now in college. I mean, he's a brilliant kid, but he has autism. So Rip gave me the idea, what about a character that, might not be very social, that, might not be able to tie his shoelaces correctly, but the minute he gets in the ring, he does everything he's ever seen on TV flawlessly. And there was like another layer to the Eugene character that Eugene would know all the trivia. If there's any trivia about some obscure wrestling event that happened, in this place, he would know what the gate was, what the card was, blah, 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 blah. I used to have to go, like when I tried to do that, I would have to go to Howard Finkel to get the stats because Howard Finkel knew all the WWE stats. But so Rip gave me this idea, and I kind of molded it over in my head. 2003, the agents would come down, guys like Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, and Fit Finley, and I pitched the idea to them. And I remember Arn was like, we're more reality based now. I don't think we'd ever do that. Okay. Time goes by. The writers came down to Louisville, and the writers rarely came down. So I pitched it to the writers. Oh, Vince would never do anything like that. Oh, okay. So I'd seen a lot of people complain and get called up. And I tell guys that I train now, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I told Doug Basham at the time, I think I'm going to quit and try to go to Japan. But I had no way to get to Japan. I didn't know anybody in Japan. I wasn't going to quit. I had a good job sleeping in my own bed every night, top babyface in my hometown. So it's like, I wasn't going to quit. I just wanted to see what happened. So the next thing I know, February 2004, I'm in a meeting with Vince McMahon and Stephanie's there. And Vince goes, I want to get back to character-based wrestling. And I just spit out that character, and he's mulling it over. The Rain Man of wrestling. Ha, ha, ha. Stone Cold Steve Austin walks in. He was there. I think they were filming a Saturday Night's Main Event, something. He was filming something. And Vince goes, Steve, have you ever seen this kid wrestle? And Austin looks at me like the way Austin looks at people, right? And he goes, no, I don't think I have. I said, well, the Nightmare Danny Davis trained me because I knew Danny and Austin became friends in Dallas when they wrestled in Dallas. And Austin goes, well, he's probably one of the best. And it was like that vote of confidence. Vince says, all right, we'll start on Monday. We didn't actually start the very next Monday, but it was 2 months later we ended up starting. So, but what I'll tell a lot of guys is you can pitch a great character. You can know who the character is. You can have a tremendous character, but if it can't relate to the ring and there's a writer or someone that cannot write for you, it's pretty much a bust. Because I saw a lot of guys have great characters on film, but it's more like, this is a character for TV. This isn't a character for wrestling because let's just say someone wants to be a fireman. Okay, we got the hook and ladder and the Dalmatian and the hat, and then we get and then the bell rings. What happens next? I don't know how a fireman wrestles. You know, you have to be whatever you're going to be, the character you're going to be, and then wrestle. So I don't know if that answered all the question, but or if I got off tangent. But there you go.
Yeah, and kind of following through what you're talking about, and we're talking about characters. In 2003, you did a brief appearance at Vengeance as Doink the Clown, as kind of originated by Matt Osborne, who recently who had an episode of Dark Side of the Ring, he kind of felt that persona. He kind of leaned into it. When you donned the Doink costume and became that character, did you feel like you were doing honor and service to Matt? And has he ever talked to you about that? Has ever seen it? I just want to see if your experience donning that costume, as so many people have done it.
I think Doink the Clown should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Doink the Clown is a character that's instantly recognizable, that everybody knows who it is, that he's loved. He's got toys everywhere. People love him, and he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And everybody that was ever under the face paint for Doink the Clown should be in the WWE Hall of Fame as Doink the Clown. That being said, I met Matt Bourne one time. It was at a Juggalo show, and I really didn't get a chance to sit and talk to him, so I didn't know him that well. But I feel like when I did Doink the Clown, I did it more for the character that WWE came up with and portrayed, as opposed to Matt Bourne's him as a person. You know, I have nothing against him, but I didn't know him very well. If I would have known him better, then I might have been able to play the character differently. I felt like, looking back, Matt Bourne was more like the Krusty the Clown of Doink the Clowns. He was like the evil clown, which is a great character. But then on the flip side, you got to have a happy clown character. So I think as the character, progressed, and guys like Ray Apollo and Steve Kern and Brooklyn Brawler, put on the Doink the Clown, they did it well. So I thought it was really cool. I got to be Doink the Clown twice. Once was on the pay-per-view, and then followed up on SmackDown. I wrestled Chris Benoit. So,
I remember that cool too. Yeah, I remember the SmackDown appearance as well.
I'm going to follow up actually with one of the questions from the comments, because I saw it and I'm very curious now, and took my question about Doink the Clown, but that's so solid. So I saw it. You talked about desserts, and you seem like kind of a foodie guy. What's your favorite dessert, and where did you have it? Right there. Thank you, Mike.
Like I said, I know it had to be in Italy when WWE was on tour there, because I think we did like 7 cities in Italy, and every night. I don't know if there's one dessert in particular, because I would just get a little bit of each, but the desserts over there were just like works of art, and they tasted even better. We've gone to some places where, like I said, they might have 1 or 2 selections that are good, never horrible, but I don't know. Probably, cakes and pies is probably my favorite. Apple pies, ice cream. I'm in for anything.
Who doesn't like some good apple pie?
We also got Mr. Jacobs. Go Pat, go.
Man, I used to watch NFL, and it's probably not the place to lay this out, but they're supposed to have a zero tolerance policy on gambling. If Pete Rose can't go back to baseball because he gambled, but yet Michael Vick gambled on the dogs that he killed, and then he killed people's pets, why we let Michael Vick back in the NFL? I quit watching it after that. I used to love Michael Vick. He was one of the hottest players ever. And after some of the things I heard, it's like it's tough to support a company after they do something as bad as that happened. Not that that's recently happened in WWE, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
No, totally. Yeah, there's nothing going on in it.
Well, the answer to that question is actually really, really simple. Follow the money, right? I mean,
yep.
That's what it is.
Always.
Yep. You mentioned that for a while there you were, I guess, more a coach, not really an agent, but a coach at the Performance Center. Is that something you're interested, perhaps, if there's an opportunity to go back and do?
I don't know if there might necessarily be an opportunity. I would definitely entertain it, but the first class at the Performance Center, because I was hired when it was still FCW, but then once I started, it was the Performance Center, and I was there for about a year and a half. Awesome experience. I mean, anybody that goes there and doesn't succeed, I don't know how it's not their fault, because they have so many resources. you got so much talent there that have had so many years wrestling, and plus all the video that they can give you any video of anything you want to learn about. So it's a great resource, but I think it's differently difficult now than it was when I started, and I don't know if I could make it with the stuff they got to go through now. So the guys that come out of there are definitely warriors.
How would you say it's different? Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on that. What do you feel has changed?
Well, I mean, I got trained by an independent wrestling company and slowly worked my way into, because if my goal was to be a pro wrestler, it might not be as urgent as WWE wanting to train someone to get them on TV to make money from them. You know what I mean? So there's definitely, I feel like there's more pressure with the WWE talent because, you have to be constantly succeeding or you're afraid you might lose your job. Not that that's a huge concern, but, those who succeed faster get seen more. You know what I mean?
I see.
The cream rises to the top. So you got to be good at what you're doing, whatever that is.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
So do you know who Marina Shafir is?
Who is it?
Do you know who Marina Shafir is?
You knew this was coming.
I don't think so. Maybe.
That's right, you don't.
There's a reason for that. Anyways, so my next question is, we're called the All Elite Zone. I have to ask this question. I've heard you talk in seminars, just out of curiosity. I want to get your take. What is your thoughts about AEW?
Yeah, I haven't watched a whole lot of it. I've watched some of it. I've seen the headlines of stuff that goes on. You can't get away from that on social media. But I think it's absolutely a great thing to have. We went so long with no competition to WWE that I don't know that wrestling got stale or bad or different, but it's definitely better if you've got, for the talent at least, if you got somewhere to go. You got somebody else to say, hey, I'll hire this guy and I'll give him more than you'll give him so you can play one against the other or just have somewhere else to go. And from what, seems like I'm hearing is maybe AEW is a little freer than maybe some of the direction that WWE has, but WWE is also probably a much larger worldwide media conglomerate than AEW is at the time. So it's almost like two different products advertising to the same people maybe. But it's a good thing for sure. And never say never. I mean, my lawyer told me that I can neither confirm nor deny that I'm in contract negotiations with either WWE or AEW.
Smart.
It's put that on there. And then speaking of which, with the competition, we talk about wrestlers going somewhere. And your experience with people you worked with. Is there someone like today in today's landscape of professional wrestling, either someone that's been there a while or a young up and comer that you kind of saw and you were like, wow, this kid, this guy, this woman, they're really good at what they do. Has anyone impressed you recently?
So when I started as a coach, two of the guys that were in my first class were Chad Gable and Braun Strowman.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty good.
I only got to work with them for a little bit, but I knew right away that these two guys had talents, different talents, but very much talent. Chad Gable is very talented, and I think it's starting to show now. So I wish the best for those guys, and anytime I see those guys, I'll usually stop and see what they're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big Chad Gable mark. I love the work that guy does. So
very good.
Who would be somebody that you'd always wanted to wrestle but didn't get a chance to? And had you ever thought of any storylines that you could have got yourself to wrestle them?
So the one guy I wanted to meet that I didn't get to meet was Macho Man. I met Lanny. I met Lanny at Powerful, but I never got to meet Macho Man. And the one guy I wanted to wrestle, I'd love to wrestle Fit Finlay, but was Regal. I felt like Eugene and Regal didn't have some kind of conclusion, whether it's a turn or something needed to happen that kind of, I got injured, he got sent to SmackDown, and that was it. So
I like that.
And what was the other part of your question?
Oh, if you'd ever thought up any dream storylines that, put yourself in those storylines and be like.
So a lot of people said, well, when you were Eugene, when you ever thought about all of a sudden you say, hey, I'm fooling everybody and I'm really not, Eugene, and now I'm Nick Dinsmore and I'm going to whatever. And Vince had thought about that, but he was afraid that future gimmick characters, much like maybe a Festus, if Eugene was to all of a sudden say, "Oh, I'm not really, I'm not really like Eugene," then maybe future gimmick characters might not have the credibility. Which at the time I thought, okay, but then after I gained some experience, like, but people with multiple personality disorders can go from like one person to another person, and then I started thinking, well, it could be a heel character that is another personality, but then there could be a woman character, there could be a referee character, there could be an announcer character. I mean, you could open it up to like all kinds of different anything, really.
That's
someone
really
with
cool.
someone with that kind of issues, mind-based, trauma-based, multiple characters might have been a direction to go, but Eugene was having fun and entertaining the fans, so I was happy.
That's solid. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember on the first iteration of WoW Women of Wrestling, there actually was a character like that. Her name was Jacqueline Hyde. Mm-hmm. And she had one side was black and one side was white, and depending on which way she turned, she was like a different person.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and unfortunately the promotion has kind of been in flux, but that was kind of interesting. I remember that. I always like to think of wrestling and performers in terms of their connection with the audience. I think that's really what is the most important thing, rather than the in-ring product. Not that the in-ring product doesn't matter, but it's really that connection to the audience, or else what are you doing it for? What advice would you give young talent about improving their promo work, which I think is really the most important thing that people need to develop? What advice would you give them about that in order to make that connection with the audience?
I don't necessarily know that. I mean, promo work is definitely important, but I was never strong at promos. I never felt like I had the booming masculine voice that like a lot of guys had. Like Shawn Michaels got a hell of a voice. Vince has got a hell of a voice, right? I never felt like I had that strong a voice, but the Eugene character didn't have to have it.
That's right.
I could talk at, sometimes my pitch is not so deep and I stutter all the time and I lose my train of thought. So Eugene could do that. And I guess the connection with the crowd is more eye contact and getting them to know you. I felt like as I went out in OVW, I would go out before the shows and intermission and sign all the autographs and meet all the people, and I got to know them. So it's much easier to have a personal connection with somebody that you somewhat know. And you can't know somebody, humans are what is it called? Eye-to-eye contact is how we relate to one another. So if I can't see your eyes, I don't know what you're thinking. You're not going to know what I'm thinking. So a lot of connecting with the crowd is looking at the crowd, opening your eyes, not doing moves. Because like you said, most people don't want to say the moves don't matter, but the moves don't matter. You know what I mean? Hogan goes out there and does this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, just like that, that's the way that people connect with you. So I don't know, getting promos is definitely, Regal used to say that you should eat like different sour fruits in the mirror to see your face make different facials. And then he would used to say, take a piece of text, I don't know, let's just say like maybe the happy birthday song, but then do it in every emotion you could think, happy, glad, sad, mad, angry, whatever all the emotions are, and try to record that and see, if you know the text, then you can just work on the emotion. And I feel like with Eugene, I knew all the moves. So now I just had to work on the in-between emotions and how to connect to the fans. So I don't know how to tell somebody how to do that, but I feel like those are things that were strengths when I became Eugene, because it's stuff that I've been doing in OVW for a long time.
That's an amazing tip. Wow, I hadn't thought of that once.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever competed in this type of match, but I guess it's worth showing that you worked Jim Cornette in a Burger King Slughouse match.
I haven't, but I'm not opposed. Like I know Cornette's a huge figure in online wrestling nowadays, or at least talking about it. And he's also pretty divisive. But I love Cornette. He was great for me. Like Danny Davis was the first guy that taught me like the in-ring moves, and then Rip kind of taught me how to work in the ring. And then Cornette was the guy that put me in positions to learn how to work as a top guy. So it's just like this evolution of education that I got with great people. I was very fortunate from the education I got, but I put myself in the right place at a lot of times, and the preparation met the opportunity when I became Eugene.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely try to look that up. I've never seen a Burger King Slughouse match, but it sounds pretty interesting. Here's one other question, Ms. Jacobs. What were your thoughts on the Eugene heel turn?
So I've talked about this before. They tried to turn Eugene heel, and I don't know if it was my inability or maybe my stubbornness as a performer, not wanting to veer from the Eugene that's working and selling merchandise and making money, going to a heel character that probably wouldn't sell merchandise, you know. Plus, they had me turn on Hacksaw, and I love Hacksaw. Hacksaw's a great guy, but at the time, Hacksaw wasn't a Shawn Michaels. If Eugene would have turned on Shawn Michaels, I think I could have gotten some heat. Turn on Hacksaw, everybody's like, what's poor Eugene doing? He's just acting crazy. You know, it just, and again, I don't know if it was the writing or if it was my performance. Because up until then, I always thank Brian Gerwick, who wrote a lot of the Rock stuff. He was writing all Eugene stuff. So he could write for Eugene and made it great. And but at this point, it was just, I think we're trying something new because the character had kind of gone probably as far as it was going to go. And we need to do something different, but I don't know if that was it.
Mid-South local wrestling shows. Didn't Rip Rogers help in training of John Cena?
Yep. Yeah. Rip was around when Cena was there. You know, like I said, I was an assistant coach, but Rip was there when Brock, Bautista, all those guys were there.
So I guess we can go over that one more time for one last question for everyone. We're getting close to the hour mark. But my last question is, I seen a seminar you did. I don't know where it was at, but you said it's basically what we were talking about earlier. You know, you can put on a really good match if the fans aren't reacting or it's just quiet, and it doesn't mean anything. I believe you said it was Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens at an NXT house show.
No, it was Adrian Neville and Sami Zayn. But yeah, it was at a NXT live event, and these guys went out there and did like stuff that I could never do, and was phenomenal. You know, but the crowd was cheering at Byron Saxton as the announcer, and then they were cheering at the music guy, and they're cheering at the janitor over in the corner. And I got them back, and I said, "Guys, the match was great, but the people didn't care." And their response was, being in NXT, if they would go back to video review in class, they would get yelled at because they weren't working hard. And I'm sitting there going, but you're entertaining the in-house crowd, which is what you're supposed to do. It's a live event. It's not a TV. And it was like, I understood right then that these guys were in a difficult spot there because if they, like, I understood sometimes you can have a great match in a live event, but it doesn't reflect that on video sometimes because it's not set up for video. It's set up for a live performance. So I really understood that they're kind of in a predicament to, you know, they have to perform, but, you know, I mean, they didn't want to get a bad review.
Yeah. So you were part of a lot of tag teams in your career, and tag team wrestling is one of my favorite things in pro wrestling. If anybody on this podcast knows, I'm a big tag team marker. I love it. As far as that, what were some tag teams you grown up watching pro wrestling? What were some tag teams that kind of you learned from to feel, hey, this could work with me and my person that I'm working as a tag team? So what were some tag teams and some inspiration you got from them?
Well, when I first started watching wrestling, I liked the British Bulldogs because they were, you know, two guys with similar dress. You know, the moves were together, and the matches they have, I thought were tremendous. You know, I like the Hart Foundation. But then as I started training wrestling, Nightmare Danny Davis was a part of the Nightmares, who was one of the greatest, you know, Southern tag teams of all time. And watching these matches, that you can have so much more drama in a tag team match than you can in a singles match. And at least when I was there as a coach, WWE would sometimes limit, you know, the stuff that the tag teams could do. I feel like to be able to feature the singles matches more because WWE has always been good with one guy versus one guy, you know, not necessarily a tag matches, but you can have so much more drama and be able to see like on video the stuff that they used to be able to do that can really create that drama is phenomenal. You're right. It should be more tag team wrestling today, I think. Used to be the old companies were always based around tag team wrestling because you could have more drama, you go more directions.
Yeah, so I agree 100%.
So this one's a little bit less about wrestling, but you seem like the type of guy who has like a ton of really awesome cheesy pickup lines. What's your favorite, and which one works the best?
Well, usually I just say a silly joke like maybe have you heard about the new corduroy pillows? You should. They're making headlines. Most of the younger kids aren't sure what corduroy is, but it's a material that's got like ridges on it. So if you made a pillow, it would make lines on your face. You tell a girl that, and then you just compliment her. Wow, you have such a pretty smile.
Done and done, man.
Yeah.
Lessons from the master, you guys. Listen up.
Oh, I'm no master. I got no game. I get less play than a record player.
You wife. I mean, that's like better than what 75% of the fan base.
No.
Well, you know, everybody's on their own journey.
That's a kind way of putting it, I guess. Yeah, absolutely.
I like it.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm the last one, but I think one of the most, I don't even know the adjective to use. One of the biggest memories I think that a lot of people have of you and the Eugene character is when you were at WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan and the Muhammad Hassan angle. Tell us a little bit about that, because I'm sure, I'd love to hear firsthand how that story kind of came together and what was going on.
So I helped train Muhammad Hassan. He moved to Louisville and trained at OVW. He's an Italian kid from Syracuse, New York. He's now a school principal in New York somewhere. Good guy. So I'd injured my knee in December, and then as I was, doing my therapy, they called me at one point and said, we're going to bring you out at Mania probably with Hogan. I was like, all right. I didn't know if it would happen or not. I wasn't even cleared. Like, I could barely walk at the time. And again, like looking back, it was just it's kind of surreal that it happens. It's almost like I remember it, but I remember it because I see it more on video than I remember it from being there. And, it's when you're a kid and you want to have the action figure and the t-shirt and you want to be in the ring at WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan and you get all those, it's like dream come true. It was an awesome experience. I don't know what else to say about it. It's almost indescribable. I just did a video. So I got a new YouTube channel out called Eugene Behind the Scenes, and I did one video about Hulk Hogan came in I think he had on the yellow and red tie-dye Hulkamania shirt, and he's looking in the mirror, and he takes it off and throws it over in the corner and says, "Oh, Hulkster needs the red and white." So he got like the red shirt or the yellow shirt. I mean, the red and yellow. Irregardless, at the end of the night, I reached over and snagged the shirt that was in the corner. But I told this big story like it was a big event, reminiscent of if you remember the Mean Joe Green Coca-Cola commercial where he throws his football jersey to the kid. I described the incident like it was just like that. I stole the verbiage from the commercial and everything, wind blowing in the hair, and but I didn't know how it happened. But that's the way I like to remember it. I also like to remember when I used to wrestle in Nashville. I also like to remember it that a young Billy Ray Cyrus would bring Miley Cyrus to the wrestling matches to watch us. That's the way I like to remember it.
Wow.
Oh, that's a fun question to end the interview with.
Hannah Montana run-in. Yeah, let's do it.
Crossover.
There you go, yeah.
We got one question. Concur, my questions have been touched on. I just want to thank quick second to just say thank you to Dick. Yeah, we definitely do. Thank you, Nick, Eugene, for coming on. We definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to do this interview. I think wrestling should have more stories than trying to get a 5-star match.
That's the way it used to be. If you want people to believe it, it has to be real. And if you're doing all this acrobatic stuff that not everybody can do and people get lost in what you're doing, then it doesn't become real.
Will you make a WWE return?
Like I said, never say never, brother. I'm still in my prime.
Eugene never gets past his prime. William Regal's actually in NXT with his son. So I don't know. Maybe you're in Florida, NXT's in Florida. You never know. But we definitely appreciate you coming on for this interview. About to get at the hour mark, but you did mention your podcast. I have all of your links in the description below. Cool. Anyone watching is interested in checking out Eugene's socials, I have the Disney World channel. I have the one you just mentioned, the behind the scenes channel. It's in there.
The new project is Eugene Behind the Scenes on YouTube. We're putting a lot of effort into that, telling some stories. I got a good buddy of mine helping me with it. So, and I've also got another YouTube channel that's got more of my matches that I've pulled off YouTube and stuff like that. The Nick Dinsmore YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram as Nick Dinsmore, but I don't use it that often. I'm starting to use it more. And then Twitter at Eugene Dinsmore with you. But I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, anyone who's interested in all that is in the link description below. I'll have everything you just mentioned in there. So definitely go check out Nick, Eugene, in the link description below. I've already subscribed to everything, so hopefully everyone watching does too. But yeah, we definitely do appreciate it.
Yeah, I just subscribed to his behind the scenes channel, Nick. So I'm excited to check it out. So
yeah, I'm gonna do that too.
Yeah, we definitely have a very creepy fan on Instagram because.
Yeah,
I'll check it out. I've been getting on my Instagram more. At the point Instagram came out, I felt like I was too old for another password and username, but now I'm starting to use it a little bit more.
I just like taking selfies, so.
If I'm ever in Florida again, we'll grab some burgers at Hogan's place.
What you gonna do, brother?
I'm gonna Hulk Hogan. Yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming on out of your busy day. Maybe one day down the future we can get you on again and maybe review a match or something.
Absolutely, sounds good.
Yeah. Does anyone else got anything they want to add before we sign off?
No, we thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. So I loved your work. Watching the kind of the adjustment from the Attitude Era to the Ruthless Aggression Era. So thank you for everything.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're absolutely pleasant, and I could definitely hang out with you for sure. I feel like we would be friends.
We would be something.
Thank everyone for watching, the comments and everything. Tomorrow. Yeah, we definitely appreciate everyone for watching. Yeah, one last time, thank you to Eugene. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of the day to do this. Yeah, we will see you guys Tuesday for AZ Canada.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, guys.